That was Dungworth, Foster and Swithenbank. Okay, none from the floor. I can see minutes. Take the minutes of the meeting, pages 9 to 30. This is the 3rd of January. Councillor Bridget.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I refer to page 20 within the minutes, the second paragraph from the top, and it is the final sentence with regard to the statement that would be issued by, or the letter that would be issued by Northumberland County Council to the Secretary of State and the Department for Health. Mr. Henry advised it would become available once it had been issued to the Secretary of State. That letter was issued several weeks ago. There's been 2 Freedom of Information requests, one from the campaign group in Rothbury asking for a copy of this letter. The Freedom of Information request was declined. I asked when this letter would be made public to all members. Can I ask that this letter is made public immediately by the close of business on Friday? I have a copy of it already. It's not confidential, it's not pink paper, but the council should be releasing it, and if it does not, I will release it on Friday.
I need to hand over to legal.
I have no comment to make, Chairman. I've heard what Councillor Bridget has to say, and I'll review the matter outside this meeting.
Did everybody hear that?
Sorry, it was just to say that I've heard what Councillor Bridget has to say in terms of disclosure of the information that he referred to. I've no comment to make at this stage. I will review the matter and respond accordingly in due course.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on minutes? Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Can I just mention on the same page, page 20, Agenda 4, Health and Wellbeing, 3rd paragraph after the previous Councillor Bridget's request. I'm afraid that we haven't received any of the ambulance times. It does say in the report, and I asked them about it because it's so important that councillors know all about the new ambulance times, and we haven't received that document. So please, could you arrange to have it sent out, please?
Yes. Anything else on minutes? Nothing further. Councillor Dickinson.
Just a very quick point in relation to the motion that was proposed and the filming of council, which the Labour group wholeheartedly support. It was disappointing to see many of the votes and lots of the crucial information from the last council not put up on the council website, and only part of the council video streamed to the public, so I think it gave a bit of a distorted view on many important points.
We are in a learning curve. This is the 2nd time we've done the live streaming. It will encounter problems. There are more microphones this time. There were breaks in the filming last time from Facebook and Twitter, I think. So hopefully it's only going out onto one stream this time. So I don't think anybody else wants to comment on that. So it's an improving situation, hopefully.
I think it's
Yeah.
sorry. I think it's just worth making the point. I don't think there was an edit. I think it was simply where the stream broke down. So.
Okay. Point taken. Right. Announcement. Disclosures of members' interests. Anybody? Yes. Are we happy with the minutes? Agreed? Councillor Sharp?
Chairman, disclosure of members' interests. Could I declare an interest in any item relating to education in the west of Northumberland as a governor of 2 first schools?
Okay. Anybody else? I am a foundation trust governor on the ambulance trust. I'll declare that. Anybody else? Declarations? Can't see any. Okay. Announcements. I have got International Women's Day, which is coming up on the 8th of March. This is at the Fuse Media Centre, Moor Lane, Prudhoe, and it will celebrate inspirational women in Northumberland. Registration is at 8:30 for a 9 o'clock start, and we'll close at 11:30, followed by tea and coffee. Please contact Susan Taylor. After that, Councillor Sanderson once had there was an incident. I'll let you.
I would just like to say that yesterday we had the pleasure of awarding Kevin Thompson, who is one of our specialist frontline workers based in Hexham, who saved someone's life from the river before Christmas time. He put himself in danger and managed to save the person who had fallen in. And we were really very delighted about that. So yesterday we gave him an award, and would just like to mark that today.
5, correspondence. I have none apart from Grant. I forgot to pick up the Farmer's Guardian off my table this morning for you.
Issues that you sent us with the different farming newspapers. But this morning I had a rare experience. Well, I'll start again. I had a rare experience this morning of the sufferance of farmers. Although all of those in this room, I'm led to believe, are multi-millionaires. I went to buy milk and water at our local shop, and I paid more for water than I did for milk. And it's a good job you lot are into sheep and cereals, because if you'd been into cattle and milking, I think you'd be struggling at this moment in time. But thanks for offering the paper. Can you just put it out with the council mail for the next edition? Thank you.
I needn't say anything more after that, do I? Right, let's go straight to questions. We only have 2 questions. From question 1, Councillor Hill, to the leader.
Thank you, Chair. In light of recent developments within local government in this authority, our neighbouring authorities across the country, and especially within the town, parish, council sector, what assurances can be given that NCC's current policies and procedures and the application of such are fit for purpose and suitably robust to ensure a fair hearing and adequate protection of complainants and whistleblowers who try to hold public bodies to account?
Thank you for that question. It's definitely an issue that this authority takes very seriously, has done in the past and is doing now. Your question is very timely because we've actually just been reviewing in the last few months our whistleblowing policy and process, under which concerns of that nature can be reported. And we've introduced a new service called Safe Call, which is independent and external to the council, in order to provide even greater assurance as to how such matters are treated and handled by the authority. In addition, all such whistleblowing concerns raised through the various routes that are available are recorded on a centrally held log which records the nature of the whistleblowing complaint, what action is taken, and what the conclusion or outcome is, so that the council can be assured that all such complaints are investigated and closed down accordingly. As for public bodies external to the council, the role which this authority has in respect of complaints and whistleblowing, specifically against such bodies, is actually very limited. In respect of parish and town councils, Parliament has noted in recent years that there are few remedies available to constituents who may wish to complain about decisions, procedures, or the conduct of members or staff of local councils outside of the 4-yearly election cycle to those councils. The government actually has taken the view that these councils are accountable to their electorate, principally through the ballot box. In response to a parliamentary question, the following statement was made. Parish councils can put in place their own mechanisms for handling complaints, having regard to a model code of practice introduced by the National Association for Local Councils. In addition, every elector has the right to raise any matter affecting parish business at an annual parish meeting, and a group of electors has the power to call for a poll on any issue which affects the parish. Also, where electors consider there has been a possible waste or inefficiency, or think that their council has spent money unlawfully, they can refer a complaint to their local district auditor. Though each council has a relationship with the district or unitary council in this case, in whose area it lies, for instance to collect the precept, this unitary council has no power of control or direction over a parish council. It is not possible, for example, to have a local council's decision reversed at a higher level unless it can be demonstrated that the decision is unlawful, as like other public authorities. Parish councils are subject to action in the courts and judicial review. The local government ombudsman does not cover local councils in England, except as regards functions which they are undertaking on behalf of principal councils. Each local council must appoint an auditor. Allegations of financial irregularities in a local council can be reported to the auditor, who then must decide whether to investigate them. The Localism Act of 2011 abolished the Standards Board for England, which investigated allegations of councillor misconduct or failure to declare interest. Under the 2011 Act, local authorities must establish their own standards regime with at least one independent person which the authority must consult when investigating an allegation of misconduct. Local councils too must establish a standards regime by adopting a members' code of conduct, although it is for the principal authority to assess and, where appropriate, investigate allegations against parish and town councillors. Complaints about the behaviour of employees of local councils should be addressed to the chair of the relevant local authority. I know you as a member are very interested in these matters, and I apologise for the length of the reply, but the reply is necessary technical, but that gives out the full situation of our understanding of this matter. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you for your answer to what is quite a broad and complex subject. Are you aware that historically this authority and many others across the country would be fine wanting if you're looking at, for example, the reliance on prescriptive uniform codes, rather when the emphasis should be on the Nolan principles? And actually Eric Pickles, the former Secretary of State, did raise that as an issue that could deter conscientious councillors and whistleblowers exposing misconduct. The use of vexatious complaints policies. For example, there's a numerous FOI requests that were put in regarding Arch that were blocked for being vexatious, and looking back at the subject specifically about those is very interesting indeed. You might also be aware that when things have been coming out in this authority, there are people who are without fault who have been saying things like, I wish I'd asked more questions. I did ask a question about that at the time. Maybe I should have asked another question. But some of us know what happens when you aren't satisfied with the answer and ask another question, being deemed vexatious and other things. For example, an elector in Rothbury who asked many questions and was branded vexatious and suffered appalling treatment. That authority has just had a public interest report. In short, he was absolutely correct.
Can we, Georgina, can we get to the question?
I'm moving to question, and I think people would be interested, for example, what's happening in Ledbury a week on Thursday. Could I ask, given how broad and complex the topic is, and as we should be pioneers for this and the problems across local government, can you give a commitment that we can look further into these issues?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do take them very seriously, and we do have good legal advice on these issues, and we do have a very active standards committee within this council. So we will continue to take those issues very seriously indeed. Thank you.
Question 2 from Councillor Hill to the leader.
I knew if it was just going to be me, I would have asked a few more. When is the full council going to have a proper debate and opportunity for meaningful input into decisions relating to North of Tyne devolution?
Yeah, thank you. A very timely question. We're actually going to convene a special meeting of council, and that will be arranged to take place next month in March to consider issues pertaining to the North of Tyne devolution, and in particular the authority's consent to the order which will create the new combined authority. We have to fit in with other local councils north of Tyne and also with the parliamentary process, and we're busy looking for the best date possible for that, and we will inform all members as soon as we have a date and a time in mind. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. That's
supplementary question.
Yes, that's very welcome that we're having this meeting. Can I ask, in terms of meaningful input, in a democracy, a meaningful input means that potentially you could vote against it. Will the full council have the opportunity to vote against it?
We'll get proper legal advice at the time. What I can say is it's actually a decision of national government to hand powers and funding down to a local level. So for this council, it's not a constitutional issue because we're not actually giving anything up from Northumberland. We're actually getting powers devolved down to our area. And that's the crux of the decision-making process, which will be explained in full at that council meeting. Thank you.
Item 7. To receive the minutes of Cabinet meetings held on 1. Tuesday the 19th of December. This is page 31 to 38. Are we happy with that? I'll move the next one. Great. Great. The next one, the January the 9th meeting, pages 39 to 44. And we have to approve the minute number 58 on the 9th of January, meeting relating to the new capital proposals considered by Officer Capital Strategy Group. Agreed. Can we agree that? Agreed, thank you. Item 8, to receive and consider minutes from the following committees. 1. Corporate Services and Economic Growth, pages 45 to 58. Who's presenting this? Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the minutes of the Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee on pages 45 to 58, being the meetings of the 8th of January, 25th of January and 1st of February. Thank you.
Can we agree those? I have no indication. Yes?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on page 52, Chair, and actually it's the scrutiny minutes of this for the Cabinet report, and item, it's appendix 44, and it states the Chairman reminded the committee that confidential items on pink papers needed to remain confidential. Well, may I just comment about that? The fact is that that was, by the time this particular committee received the pink papers, there was already a leak to the press prior to us receiving the pink papers, and actually we were actually named, and they said it has been, quite apparent that it's been omitted from these minutes that it was that we were accused, the Labour Party members who was in that scrutiny were actually named as the people who had leaked that information. But may I add, it was released to the press soon before we had actually received the pink papers. I just would like to have that minuted, Chair.
Would I ask the Chairman to comment?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not aware of any leak to the press. All that I'm aware of is that following the meeting of our committee on pink papers, which discussed the potential location of shared services, that was made very clear to all members of the committee that location was subject to confidentiality for very valid commercial reasons. That very shortly afterwards, on the official Labour blog, there was a statement identifying where those jobs were to be located, and I thought that was extremely inappropriate.
Councillor Grimshaw, you indicate to come back. I will allow that.
Thank you. it was actually where it was another authority that had the information prior, and they had indeed passed the information on, and people in groups do actually comment about these issues. But we took actual offence of saying that it was us that actually had leaked the pink papers, which we had not. And I'd just like an apology because I thought that was very offensive. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Item 2. Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny, pages 59 to 76. Councillor Renner Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny minutes, pages 77 to 82. We met on Wednesday, the 6th of December, Thursday, the 14th of December, and January the 18th. I should point out that any questions relating to the meeting on the 6th of December with Belford School Reorganisation should be directed at Councillor Sessford because he chaired that part of the meeting.
Right. Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Just to note, I'm not actually a governor of any school at the present time, so in case anybody thinks I am, I'm not, but the press seems to think I am. But what I would like to say is on page 72 to congratulate the Education Department and the work that's been undertaken over the last 5 years. I remember in 2013 the Ofsted report that came in, which was quite scathing about the County Council Educational Services. And since then, in the last 5 years, the improvement has been enormous. So I would like to thank everybody in the last 5 years who have had an input into improving educational services. I know there's a long way to go, but the educational services have improved. And thank you to all concerned.
Can we agree? The Family and Children's Services, thank you. Item 3, Communities in Place, Overview and Scrutiny, pages 72 to 82. Sorry, 77 to 82. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, move the minutes of the committee, Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny on pages 77 to 82.
Anybody want to come with anything on that? I can't see anybody. Can we agree those? Agree. Right, item 4, Health and Wellbeing, Overview and Scrutiny, pages 83 to 92. Who's doing this? Councillor Rickaby, I thought so.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move the minutes of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on Tuesday the 16th of January, pages 83 to 92.
I'm going to Scott Dickinson at the back and then Stephen Bridget at the front. I'm trying to announce so the girls have got an advantage of...
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to thank the committee for their working group taking into consideration the points that I submitted about the dental services in Coquetdale, which also extends to my area. I've also raised that at the Health and Wellbeing Board. I just wanted to stress under these minute notes, page number 87 to 41, that it is crucial for a community like Hadston to have access to dental provision, often with poor public transport, and we're all aware of the additional health issues that can relate to poor dental hygiene. So I really welcome the fact that they're looking at options to reintroduce some kind of provision there. The health centre itself received over £1 million to have a refurbishment which included the dental area, so it's really helpful in terms of the facilities that are there. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now then, Councillor Bridget.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can I echo Councillor Dickinson's comments, and can I ask that the Health Scrutiny Committee keep the pressure on NHS England with regard to this? If you have the chance to actually read the minutes of that meeting, there was a distinct lack of understanding from NHS England with regard to the areas that are being covered by this provision in terms of how they propose to engage residents with the consultation and what they were looking at for potential options in the future. We're 5 weeks on and I'm still waiting to hear back from my correspondence over the last few weeks from NHS England. So I would ask if the committee could really keep the pressure on NHS England with regards to this.
Okay, I see no other hands up. Do we agree those minutes? And now we have item 5 there, Health and Wellbeing, which is presented by me. which is the meeting of the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 16th of November. I can't see him, and there should be two, is it? $93 to $100. Are we happy with those? Agreed. Now we come to the Audit Committee, and we go to Councillor Hill.
Thank you,
Pages
Chair.
101 to 118.
Thank you, Chair. Moving the minutes of the Audit Committee on 24th of January and 6th of December. Just draw members' attentions to page 111 and an outstanding piece of officer work that was done for us regarding arch borrowing. Ability to present very complex technical information in a way that was easily understood by the committee, and would like to thank that officer once again. Also, I know that we'll be discussing this later, Active Northumberland, given the damning report, serious issues of governance, we've invited the Chair of Active Northumberland to the next Audit Committee. And indeed, there's an outstanding invitation also to the Leader of the Opposition, and we still haven't had a response from that either. But that's the minutes of those audit committees.
Anything on that? Anybody want to make a comment? Nothing? Can we agree that? Agreed. And item 7, Standards Committee, pages 119 to 124. Can we pass these minutes? The chairman will not obviously be here. Are we okay with that? Standards Board? Councillor Roughhead? Can you? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. On page 121, obviously, I'm the Mayor of Berwick and a member of Berwick Council, so I'll just declare a personal interest here. I was in attendance in that meeting in my own personal capacity as an individual and gave sort of my story, what I sort of witnessed on Berwick Council over the past 4 years. And the Hoy Ainscough report, I sort of mentioned that the ultimate flaw within that was that it tried indicating that the bad behaviour, the poor conduct, the vexatiousness, the swearing at meetings was the cause of the problem, whereas that was the symptoms of the problem of poor governance, lack of transparency, and what's seemingly coming out now, unlawful decision making. So that I would just like that put in. But I do appreciate the work that the Standards Committee done on this, and I'm actually glad that Berwick Council is no longer a focus point of this authority's Standards Committee. And the final point was that I also made a recommendation as a suggestion, rather than summoning the clerk of a council down to sort of a hearing, it would have been better had the Standards Committee sent a delegation up to actually witness mass improvements. Thank you.
Your comments will be noted.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, we agree, the Standards Committee? Yep. Right, now then, reports of the Chief Executive, item 9. Off we go with the corporate plan. Now, who's going? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Chair. We've been around the county doing presentations to the local area councils, so I don't propose to take everybody through the corporate plan again, but I'd just like to make a sort of few key points about the content and the approach. First of all, the corporate plan is the sort of overarching directional document for this administration, so it sort of sets the tone of what we hope to achieve in the next 3.5 years, and it forms the basis for the medium-term financial plan, but also for the budget and for the service plans for individual departments. So it's a very important document that sets out our sort of almost our corporate strategy, really. We have taken a different approach to the previous administration. We wanted to make it more resident focused. So it was less of an internal document and more about impacting the lives of residents throughout the county, through the whole county. So we've tried to sort of word it, use language that speaks to residents rather than necessarily to officers. Obviously the officers have been very involved and very helpful in preparing the plan and giving us some very, very useful steers on about what may be or may not be possible. So it is resident focused, but it's also set in very challenging, a very challenging context. So we have to be bold, we have to be ambitious, and we'll hear more about that when we come on to the budget. We've presented to local area councils. There have been two sort of substantive comments that have been raised in local area councils, and we've taken both of those on board. The first, that there should be greater reference to meeting the needs of the most disadvantaged, particularly within the educating sector. So we're facing some great challenges, and particularly in our more disadvantaged areas, education and health in particular. There's some massive disparities between the best areas in the county and the worst areas, and that's a challenge we can't ignore, and we have to be bold and do something to address those problems. And we will do that, and we're very, very happy to include that amendment and reinforce the message that we hope came through the whole document. The second recommendation was that we should make should be an equitable reference to both Tyneside and Edinburgh City regions as travel to work areas prevailing in Northumberland. You won't be surprised to hear that this came from the North Northumberland local area council, and it's a point we do acknowledge. Northumberland is geographically a very, very large county. We've got huge expanses of rurality with very sparse populations. We've got market towns. We've got an urban centre in the southeast. So it's a difficult county in that respect because there are many different types of local area. But we are determined as this administration that we're going to basically give a fair deal to the whole of the county, the west, the north and the southeast. So I don't propose to take anybody through the actual content of the plan. I'll take it as read. Members have certainly been to the local area presentations, and I'll halt there for any questions. Thank you.
We have one. We've got Councillor Grant Davey.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it's great to see the written version of the corporate plan here, and we think it's a very, very good written corporate plan. It doesn't conflict with our alternative budget that we're going to deliver in a few moments when we get round to that, or our medium-term financial plan. But I'm not letting Councillor Oliver get away with the slaver that he did a good job at the local area councils in presenting this at a level that was meant to be for the public at large. It was dreadful. There was a series of information given out with no base behind it and no information given to say why that information was being put forward. They were chronic, and I'm so surprised that such a wonderful plan has come from a consultation that was so badly run and badly organised. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to comment?
I'd just like to thank Councillor Davey for acknowledging that it is a wonderful plan. I think Thank you.
Councillor Deal.
Can I get this? I'll try and get it right this time. Thank you very much. And I did have an opportunity, but I'm the only actually person who spoke out at the area committee on this, so I can't go on too long. But I have an opportunity to have an input. Can I just say, when you're talking about zero-based budgeting, I think that's great, but could you also look at the statutory services that we are required to deliver? Because to me, the most important things are we need a safe fire service, we need good hospital services, we need all the things. We don't budget for all of those, but we do have an input. Also, I would like more acknowledgement that we are a very diverse county in all kinds of ways. And lastly, which I think is missing, is that I think all the people in Northumberland want everybody to work together in partnership. So I would like to see more words of partnership working. So working with. There is nothing very clear about actually working with the NHS, working with this, working with that, because we need to work together. We're going to be very, very short. We're going to have more and more budgetary cuts, and we need to recognise that we have to work in partnership, and partnership is one of the big words around at the moment.
I'm not sure we've read the same document, but I think on the first point, the zero. I mean, the budget point is a point for probably for discussion later. But we produced a zero-based budget, as you'll see shortly, and it includes all of the statutory services. And you make the point that we don't budget for those statutory services. That's just simply not correct. Every service is budgeted for. Onto the point of diversity, yes, I acknowledge that we are a diverse county and we're addressing that in our corporate plan. It is a key theme of the corporate plan. And in terms of partnership, one of the 5 key themes in the corporate plan is collaboration. To me, collaboration and partnership are very, very similar in meaning. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councillor Pidcock.
Yes, I've waited a long time for this corporate plan.
Hang on. Wait a bit longer till you get the microphone.
I've waited a long time for this corporate plan. It's taken you a long time. I would have thought you would have had this ready before the election, so we knew what you were about. I'm very disappointed that the word equality is not in the plan at all. There's no levelling of the poorest with the richest in your ideas, and I find that very disappointing.
We just talked about the disparities in health and education. It's a key theme of this corporate plan to try and address some of those disparities. And it is really important to us. In terms of the word equality, if it's not in there, I can't remember precisely whether it is, but if it isn't, then I apologise. I wish you'd raised that at the area council and we could have included it. But the theme of equality is a key theme running through the whole plan.
Okay. I have nobody else indicating that they wish to speak. Do we need to agree this? Yes? Can we agree this? Thank you. 2, strategic review of active Northumberland. Now we have Chief Executive Daljit Lally and then Councillor Kath Homer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Members requested an update about the active review at a previous meeting, so I will just give you some information about the background to the review and the key findings. The review was commissioned by myself in conjunction with the Board of Active Northumberland. The review was requested following some concerns that were raised with me after I became the interim Chief Executive. I was particularly concerned about some of the governance and financial arrangements, health and safety responsibilities, and some of the staff issues raised by staff when I visited services. Subsequently, last May, probably June, early June, I went to meet with the Board of Active Northumberland, and we agreed at that time that it would be useful to have, given the issues being raised, a review that was independent of both the Council and of Active Northumberland, which is, as you are aware, a charity. The review findings are a reflection of a period in time, so it looked at the previous period to that time and was undertaken, as I've said, by an independent reviewer. The review process included staff and stakeholders, and that included trade union colleagues who actively contributed to the findings of the report. It included a review of all of the systems and processes and alongside an organisational culture review too. I won't go through in any huge detail each element of the review because the report has been available and members have been able to read that. I will just cover that the Audit Committee has also considered the review, and the Council continues to ensure accountability through the client function, because we need to be clear that the organisation operates and should operate separately to the Council as a charity, but obviously the Council is the core funder, and it is very important from a client function that the Council is clear around many of these responsibilities and that it protects the public in the services it delivers. The clear evidence of the independent review, as set out in the report, was there was some very poor leadership, and a lot of the staff were very unclear about the management arrangements and the cover for responsibilities in key critical areas. There was a lack of evidence of rational-based decision-making, so some examples of that were about the pricing strategy, the outsourcing of the marketing arrangements and the call centre arrangements. And the reason I highlight these because it gave particularly the staff and, more importantly, alongside the staff, the public had some difficulties in accessing some of those services. There were some concerns, significant concerns around weak governance, and particularly in terms of health and safety. And I would advise those were put right very quickly in terms of ensuring all legislative health and safety arrangements were monitored following having been revised. And also there were some issues around performance monitoring, so it wasn't quite clear about how the arrangements were in place and what outcomes were coming. There was little evidence of forward strategic planning, and there wasn't a coherent business plan or operating framework in place. There was some ineffective due diligence and leadership processes, and a lack of clarity of service transfers between the council and Active Northumberland. The report also identified a lack of appropriate organisational information and financial information particularly, and a lack of assistance to Active Northumberland in managing their budgets. There was also a lack of appropriate level of professional advice taken in some key business areas, and little opportunity for customer feedback. One of my key concerns, having previously been the Director of Children's Services, there was, for some areas of the service which ran children's services, a lack of oversight, particularly through the board, of safeguarding processes, procedures, and there was an intention to put in place some, what I would call poor services, for example, some unpersoned services around the pools. So, for example, a plan around no lifeguard arrangements and introduction of cameras. So, alongside that, some issues around DBS checking. So, that is just a very brief summary, as members had requested an update of what the external review had been, why the external review had been commissioned, and what the key findings were. As I've said previously, the Audit Committee has received some information about this and will, alongside the client function of the Council, continue to monitor arrangements. There have been a number of parts of progress subsequent to the review and alongside the review. One of the key things I would need to say is that in terms of staffing, operational management, we are looking to ensure that the organisation focuses, in terms of the council-funded arrangements, on leisure services going forward, and I think that's a key and critical point. And I would give you an undertaking that officers are working on the gaps, for example, in financial control, to ensure the organisation is supported.
Councillor Homer.
Thank you very much. I think it's fair to say that following the elections in May last year, it did become apparent very, very quickly to the administration and myself as the new portfolio holder for Culture, Arts, Leisure and Tourism, that a review of Active Northumberland was absolutely critical. I think it's also fair to say that it's been quite a long and difficult piece of work, and it's not a piece of work that I was directly involved in, but I am now an Active Northumberland board member as part of my role. I think it's important that we say, to all of the staff and the management out there within Active Northumberland, and some of the staff that have transferred now back to Northumberland County Council, that their patience has been appreciated while the results of and the findings have come out into the public domain. I think as portfolio holder, there are a number of points that I just wanted to highlight, and just reiterating the comment there made by Daljit. I think it's very important to understand that this review report is based on a very specific point in time. And I'm not going to go through all of the detail either, except to highlight a couple of the points throughout the report. And for me, it was things like the fact that there was no operating agreement. So there was no direction from Northumberland County Council, and that's highlighted on pages 149 and 158. There was no clear direction on what the Trust was to provide in return for the management fee, which is on pages 150 and 152. Quite often budgetary information was withheld and financial commitments increased without the knowledge of the management team and the knowledge of the board, and that's outlined on page 160 and 163. Services were added to the Active Northumberland portfolio without an explanation, without a strategy, without any change in the management fee or any business case, and that's outlined on page 154. There were limited opportunities to demonstrate robust governance based on continual changes of direction from the council. That's explained on page 160. And there were examples of ad hoc and often knee-jerk decision-making. For example, the 2016 pricing structure changes, which I think we were all familiar with, which benefited some residents, but wholly discriminated against other very specific user groups. That's outlined on page 154. I suppose there's little wonder that this resulted in a bit of a dysfunctional organisation with little ability or opportunity to meet the budget savings that had been assigned to it. And I think it's important to mention the impact on the staff here. Poor staff morale is mentioned on page 153. And I think it outlines there the damning statement from the Unison survey of 2017 that said 95% of staff did not want to work or could recommend working for Active Northumberland. Plus the comment about the creation of a culture of mistrust and uncertainty, which is outlined on page 159. As far as the finances were concerned, some of you may remember in 2016 that there was a bailout of Active Northumberland and a statement that Active would produce a credible business plan, a budget and a recovery strategy with a view to saving £2 million in the next financial year and £1.5 million in the following year. That's very publicly documented. This didn't happen. More importantly, there's a £2 million black hole in the finances that have had to be met by this administration in order to make sure that the books are balanced. To some degree, that goes towards efficiencies that were never realised within the organisation, but it's also partly job evaluation costs and the costs that Daljit referred to there about marketing and about fees for the contact centre. That's an incredible amount of money. I think it's very important that I say just a few words about what's happened since May 2017. Whilst the review has been ongoing, the board have met on a monthly basis. Recently, that's been twice monthly, and they've been very long meetings. There's been 3 replacement members to the board of 5, and following a skills audit last year and a recruitment campaign at the end of the year, the board will be appointing new members in the next 3 weeks, specialising in particular in marketing and finance, which were identified as skill gaps on the current board. The board will also appoint an independent chair to ensure the leadership and challenge is in place to lead the board through the next phase of its development. As far as Northumberland County Council is concerned, we will ensure it manages the client relationship between Northumberland County Council and Active Northumberland going forward constructively, as it does with the many other organisations that have management agreements in place with the council. An offer has been made following a transparent recruitment process to a permanent chief executive for Active, and pending all the recruitment paperwork, it is hoped that he will be in post by late spring. This is a hugely positive step, and I personally look forward to him joining the organisation. This Friday, the board will be meeting with Northumberland County Council to discuss in detail the budget and the management fee following this afternoon's meeting. And we will agree the operating principles for 18-19 and the service level agreements for all Northumberland County Council support services going forward. Within the context of a balanced budget, from April the 1st, Active Northumberland will be solely responsible for leisure and sport provision at Northumberland County Council facilities across the county. Previous directives from Northumberland County Council prior to May 2017, like the requirement to move to unmanned gyms and swimming pools without lifeguards, have halted. Huge amounts of work have been undertaken on implementing policies and procedures across the organisation, including finance, health and safety, risk appraisal, facilities management, safeguarding and HR. All of these subjects have a place on the board meeting agendas, with regular attendees providing service updates. The interim accountable officer meets regularly with finance officers in between board meetings when finance statements are presented to board members. As far as the staff are concerned, job evaluation has been escalated and is nearing completion, with some negotiations required, but fundamental progress has been made to completing the exercise effectively. Terms and conditions are in the process of being harmonised to ensure that all staff are engaged and recruited on the same terms and conditions across the service. Staff matters are raised and managed appropriately by the appropriate heads of service areas. And a staff survey has recently been completed by an independent organisation, and we look forward to receiving those results shortly. Safe Call has also been introduced at Active Northumberland as well as Northumberland County Council to ensure that staff have the ability to raise concerns outside of the management structure in a robust and transparent way. And as far as safeguarding is concerned, as previously mentioned, the move to unmanned gyms and pools was halted. Interim arrangements are in place with an accountable person in the areas where we have a nursery, and Active has embraced good practice by embarking on a plan of staff DBS checks, despite this not being an industry requirement. A review of facilities has been started with the board, and a business case will support each centre going forward, and any decisions made about facilities will be based on financial facts and health, well-being and community outcomes. A business case will also support bids to the leisure buildings and facilities improvement parts of the capital programme, working alongside estates who have been responsible for carrying out condition surveys in the last 12 months. The contact centre has been taken in-house and resource has been put behind marketing and communications. Some of you may have been aware of the Christmas campaign, No More Socks, which resulted in 332 new members, and the Stay Active membership scheme for over 65s, which was launched in October and has resulted so far in a further 233 members. They have been provided at minimal cost to Active Northumberland and not by an outside organisation. At the March meeting, the Active Northumberland Board will consider a paper on membership development options, but this will be in line with the Northumberland County Council outcomes and target group priorities and the overall business plan of the organisation. Active will also look to benchmark its operation and performance indicators in the context of the wider leisure industry. As we move to the coming financial year, the next steps for Active Northumberland, as far as we're concerned, are very clear. That will include the commitment to continue the positive steps that I've already explained. It will include regular updates to the Audit Committee on progress, and it will include regular staff communications and an aim to complete the job evaluation and harmonisation of terms and conditions as soon as possible. What I'd like to do finally is just to pay testimony really to the commitment of the management and the staff, both within Active Northumberland currently and those who have since transferred back to Northumberland County Council, across all the service areas, leisure, culture, libraries, tourism, heritage and arts, who have indeed shown great resilience and a determination to provide a quality service to the residents of Northumberland in often extremely challenging circumstances. For me personally, I look forward to reporting on more positive outcomes as the year progresses. Thank you.
Right, there's been one or two indicated to speak before we have to agree and endorse the various recommendations within the report. Councillor Bridget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I read this report, I went back and looked at the correspondence that I'd sent to the then Chief Executive, or whatever role you would like to put her in at the time regarding the increased pricing. And I had serious concerns that my community was being asked to pay a fee when it didn't offer many of the services that other areas did. And as a result of that, it's plain to see, you just need to speak to many of the residents in my area. They went elsewhere. Many of them went to private facilities. So my question is two-pronged, because the cynic in me looks at that report, and on page 154, the 9 centres that are listed there, and I'm saying this is the cynic in me, looks at that as a list of closures. Potential. That's what worries me. So I'm asking for an assurance that that is not the case. And if it is something that this administration is considering, and I'm going to make the case for my community, in Rothbury, we have a library building and we have a leisure facility operated on 2 different sites. And I raised this with Councillor Oliver when they came to the area committee about how I felt some of the larger towns within Northumberland were benefiting from significant capital investment, and smaller towns like Corbridge, like Haltwhistle, like Wooler, like Bellingham, like Rothbury were being missed out. I would make the case that if this is being considered as potential sites for closure, that we look to basing those facilities on a same site. It would take a capital investment, but in the longer term, in terms of staffing and in terms of energy consumption and all of those, it would actually look to reduce the council's revenue commitment. So before it makes any rash decisions, the administration consider what all of the options are within a community before that. But my biggest concern was reading those 9 centre names. I really hope that is not the case.
Anybody want to comment? That one.
Thank you. I think the important message here is obviously there are financial issues for Active Northumberland going forward. We've made a commitment as part of this budget about how we will address those through the management fee and an operating agreement that falls in line with that. The board have already conducted a facilities review, and the board are meeting next week to look at the different areas, I suppose, within the portfolio. I can't give any categoric, I suppose, response to that other than to say it's not just about the finances. We appreciate that it's about the other outcomes, which is what I said earlier, about community outcomes, about health and well-being. But undoubtedly, the business cases need to stack up, and that's where there's a change, if you like, in emphasis from Active Northumberland. We're not saying yes to anything, we're not saying no to anything. What we are giving a commitment to is that each individual case will be looked at properly in terms of a business case, and any decisions that we make will be made in that framework, but we will also talk to the people who are directly affected, and that includes the relevant members.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. First of all, I have actually read this report. I've read all previous reports, and I've also read all the updates from the audit under the monitoring of Active Northumberland. Can I just go back, because I think we're missing a very important point here. And I'm being honest, I was the one who started in with Active, well, it wasn't, it was Leisure Tynedale, and we put together Leisure Tynedale as a trust because of the business rates and our overheads. And that is why the trust was formed, because that enabled us to deliver more leisure facilities with more money. Now, when we set it up, it was very, very clear that the Charity Commission, and this was working with Bond Dickinson, or Dickinson Dees now, made it very clear that we had to be arm's length, because the service level agreement we put together at the very beginning was too close, and we would lose our charitable position. So there's a very, very clear arm's length decision to be made here. I think one of the big things this council has, and is fundamentally not discussed here, is this is a diverse, a sparse, and an equitable county. And what we're saying is, what will the council and how much will the council support all the services we want active Northumberland to deliver? And Councillor Bridget says one thing: we have a rural issue. We were able, with Leisure Tynedale, to build a brand new Wentworth Centre. And that cut the cost of overhead substantially, because we put everything in, was modern, up to date, and it runs well. Now, I think before we can make all these recommendations about the lack of governance, which we know about, the lack of the SLA, which has gone on and on, the performance indicators, I can also say, Scrutiny should be looking at this. Scrutiny should be asking the questions and monitoring. And that is Scrutiny's position. But I really want to be very clear that I think you actually need, to go back to understand what this council and what the council taxpayers want to afford for us to deliver these services. Because if there is a will, as somebody said once, that the cost was, swimming went up by 50%. It went from 50p a day to £1 a day. We need to decide how we deliver these services on a proper basis, and not just on, we've got poor governance. We want to look at a strategic approach to delivering leisure services, what we can afford and what people want to afford. We can do, a 5-star leisure facility. But are people going to pay for it? Or how much does the council want to support it? And all these things need to be looked at. It's very easy just to put an SLA together and say, well, carry on. But we need to go down to back to basis for this area. And I'm sorry, thank you for that.
Councillor Davey.
Chair, we read this report, and we've had this report nearly a week now, and thought it was a very good report, and we obviously were on the full understanding that we were well aware of the review going on. Staff have spoken with councillors here all of the time, they do chat with us and things, and we thought it was time for the review. We felt within the written papers as a group that this was getting the council closer to leisure, that we would get there and eventually be able to deliver these as council services, and that's the way the paperwork is written within this review. Councillor Homer stood up and gave the opinion to everyone here, and you've all heard us speak this afternoon, that it was a council service, that it was working really, really closely with the council, and they would be able to deliver these services in a slightly different fashion. But in our response to our good friend from Rothbury, it appears that a private board are making the decisions on behalf of the council wholly on whether facilities stay open or not. This council is the client. This council decides, what client money should be put in, as Councillor Dale's just explained. And, we now cannot vote for this. We can't vote against it. We just think this is far too early now for this report to be brought forward. A meeting next week is going to decide on the future of leisure facilities in this council, but you've brought the report this week. There's something sadly wrong. And I'd like to move a motion now that we actually bring this back to the next council with the full information available to see what facilities will remain open and what facilities will be closed, and exactly what the position of the council is in leisure.
Councillor Jackson, go on, I've got some.
Yeah, thank you. I'd firstly like to pay tribute to my council colleague who's actually given us quite a comprehensive review of what's in the report, and all of the statements that she's made are actually evidence-based. And actually the real evidence is actually a lot worse than you see here. And it's pretty extraordinary for the Labour group to try and wash their hands of this. They've been actually in control of this leisure service right across the county for the last 4 years. That 4-year period in which this absolute mismanagement and waste of money and stress on resources and on people have just been of a catastrophic nature in leisure services. This is the most damning report that anyone in their lifetime is likely to see on a leisure service. And what we're trying to do is actually rescue it from Labour mismanagement. So this year alone, we're having to give them £2 million to balance their budget. And if we didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to pay the wages next week. All of the leisure centres would close because you didn't do a proper job of making sure that they were financially endowed with enough money to keep them going. So, I mean, I can see you all had your heads down during that report, and quite right too. You should hang your heads in shame. Hang on. I haven't named anyone. No.
Hang on, Grant. I'll bring you back in after.
No, it's.
Well, what is the point of order? What is the point of order? What's the point
Councillor Bridget.
Councillor Jackson was on the cabinet of this council for all of those.
That's not a point of order.
I'm just about to go into that.
That's not a point of order.
I'm just about to go into that.
I have legal advice. That's not a point of order.
I'm about to go into that because Councillor Bridget was quite right. He did raise concerns, and I, as leader of the opposition group, raised concerns over the last 4 years about the governance. Why was it just one Labour cabinet member on the committee? And I said that was likely to lead to major problems, and my God, they're 10 times worse than I ever thought they would be. I've raised the point about Active Northumberland not having a business plan for the last 5 or 6 years. And people in West Area Committee will remember that I kind of made an issue out of it. Because a business with a turnover of £12 million a year without a business plan is a business heading for disaster. And anyone will tell you that. The pious comments coming from the previous chair of audit kind of stick in the throat of most people in this room as well. It's the heart of this is a governance failure in a charity that's effectively been kind of managed by the council, and it's 100% financed by the council. The clear responsibility lies with the previous audit and the previous auditors, and we've been given that seriously poor information, and it's led to this crisis state where we've actually had to step in and make sure that things are put on a proper footing for the future. And like I say, we've put into place proper governance. We've given them a rescue package of £2 million just to pay the wages for this year, and we're going to make proper financial provision from now on. We're going to run a proper, efficient, properly managed service and make sure that everything's done properly from now on. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you for bringing us back in, Chair. I'll just remind you that most of the stuff that Councillor Jackson spoken about there is completely incorrect. The companies that ran separately on old Borough Council information and Borough Council contracts until 2015. Right? It was late 2015 when they all came together to work together. It was a massive, massive task for the leisure people at that time. The Leisure Board was collapsed by the council following a report that was brought in by independent leisure people, not council people, and a new board was formed. And that board contained one member of the council. People were brought in who were recommended to the council, and primarily, I will not say who recommended them, but they weren't Labour people. They were brought in from other organisations because they were thought by, in many cases, Councillor Jackson to be excellent officers to do this work. And I've got to say that I think that to join what was 9 separate organisations together, they did a very, very good job. What the difficulty they had was, as they ran towards May last year, the new council immediately stopped working on the Arch side. Arch were giving them £1 million a year to try to resolve some of the issues that they had in this unification. It is now down to the council to resolve the issues. The review is written in a pattern that does resolve those issues, and it wouldn't matter whether you were in power, the Liberals were in power, or we were in power. That review would have had to have gone on now, because this was year 3, just year 3, not 5 or 6 years of worry, year 3 of a new organisation. Councillor Homer and the questions surrounding Councillor Homer's speech today hasn't given us the faith that the review is actually correct. We've now got people who attend leisure facilities who may not have a leisure facility after next week.
Councillor Dale, can you pass it?
Sorry, thank you. I think I do need to respond to Councillor Jackson, who once again likes to put the blame on me for everything. Thank you, Councillor Wearmouth. And I know that. I see it on Facebook, I see it on everything. I don't believe and belong to that type of culture. I believe a bit of honesty and integrity. So...
Come on.
Sorry. So anyway, what I would like to say was, I haven't put blame on anybody on this. However, what I will do is, we have this under audit. I've got all the reports here. November 2015. And the report is more or less being copied. It is nearly the same report. And at that time, all the board resigned. And a new chair came along, a Mrs. Angus from the NHS, together with other board members. Anyway, they left within a very short time. So we had more board members. Not once did the Cabinet or any Cabinet members in that time or Scrutiny even look at this. And yet, we, the Audit Committee, were getting regular reports. They were going to Council, the papers were all there. But I would just like to go into the terms of reference. I'm not going to bore you with them. But you should know the terms of reference. And it is not for us. We consider. We don't direct. And I think that you need to look back and let's work out everybody together, because at the present time, everybody seems to be blaming for everything. Well, I'd just like to move that forward. You heard what I said before, and maybe you can enact on it. But if you want to put me through that, just for your own vengeful point, do so. But I don't think you're right.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've just got the most extraordinary amount of passing the buck here, and people refusing to take responsibilities for the failures of the last 4 years. They're deep, they're serious, and we're putting them right. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Chair. I read this when these papers came out, as I suppose all of you did, and it is absolutely disgraceful. This is a report that is damning, and it's not about the future, because we had some very good positive news, and there's going to be decisions about the future. This report is about what has happened under the previous administration, and the passing of the buck is, as the leader says, is unbelievable. The fact that they can sit there tutting and criticising an independent report which says in black and white all the failings. And it's not passing the buck to an independent charity, which we have nothing to do with. The criticisms in the report include direct criticisms of the administration of the council as the client, failing to set the parameters of Active Northumberland as a client, setting the role of Active Northumberland, or acting properly as a client. And another member, which I will not name, wants to talk about reconciliation and working together. Well, I would like to do that. But to be able to do that, we need some honesty and integrity, and we need people to be accountable and actually admit where they have gone wrong and put their hands up, and then we can move forward. But until we have this denial, this, oh, it's all witch hunts, oh, it's all vengeance, oh, it's all, let's just pretend that this wasn't any of our responsibility. How can we move forward genuinely and get this right for the county? So I ask those people behind me who really are upset by this report to read it carefully, accept their part in the responsibility for it, and work with us to put it right. Thank you.
Hi. Councillor Davey, I want to start and move on because...
Chair, Councillor Bourne is yet 100% wrong. We were wishing to support this report, and we've said so until we heard that there may be facilities closing. So Councillor Bourne's statement there is that we don't want to work together. We do want to work on this. We do want to get it correct. We wanted to get it correct in 2015. You've run it since May this year, and you've tried to do something with it. We want to do something with it as well, but we don't want to see people lose their facilities. So we'd like Councillor Homer, which is what my motion was about, to report back the feelings of their board at the next council.
Right, Councillor Homer, you've been mentioned there. Do you want to come back? We're not going to vote.
Thank you. I thought I'd made it absolutely clear about the fact operating agreements, management fees. I said to you there was going to be a meeting this week on Friday to discuss with Active Northumberland what Northumberland County Council's what that operating agreement will be. What will the council expect Active Northumberland to provide? Active Northumberland then are entitled to meet and to look at, in respect of that management fee and the overall budget of Active Northumberland going before it, what they can actually provide in those budgetary terms. If you want something to come back to the next council meeting, I'm more than happy to do that. But can I just say to you one last point? I sat on the Scrutiny Committee for Arts, Leisure and Culture in the last administration. It's all very well talking now about how easy it was to scrutinise decisions. It wasn't. And I look around this room and I see there is a number of people who also sat on that Scrutiny Committee with me. It was really difficult to get that information to the Scrutiny Committee. We went through time after time, agendas being set for that committee without any reports being included, and quite often information was delivered on the hoof to those committee meetings, and members weren't given the opportunity to read up on the information in advance, and they weren't able to prepare to ask the questions that needed to be asked. And we know they needed to be asked because this strategic review has told us the commitment that you're getting from this administration today is that is not going to be our way forward.
Thank you. Right, I have from the Chief Executive that this is not needed to agree this report. It is for information, and it is for the active board, for them to decide what they do with this report. So, right. Off we go. There are a number of members left in that chamber. Move on to report of the Director of...
You have some members missing from the chamber who I think intend to return, and if they want to participate in the next item, they've really got to be here.
Right, there's one or two left the chamber. Do we know, have they left? or just outside? Because when we start this item, there would be...
It's not very well, Chair.
Fair dues. Has she gone home?
I don't know.
She's out with another member, Chair, so I think that might be worthwhile having pause.
Can we have a comfort break? Can we agree a comfort break? No? Right, I'm told to carry on.
Chairman, can I just make a comment that if the members are not present in the chamber, if the members are absent presently are not present during the entirety of the next item, they cannot participate in that, and they most specifically cannot vote on the item.
Item 10.
I think if Liam's all right, just tell him to go. And he just goes.
Right. I've got 1, 2 back. I know, I've got... Good to see you back, Kath.
Has Councillor Heppel left?
Has Councillor Heppel left? Right, okay. Right, let's move on. Item 10. Hang on, someone's just passed the door. I can see if it is. No. Item 10. Medium term financial plan. And I have Councillors Jackson and Oliver.
Right, thank you, Chair. It falls to me as Leader of the Council to introduce the budget debate and recommend the budget to you. Much has been claimed since we started briefings on our budget proposals in January. And there have been many myths circulating, and they're just that. They're myths, factual inaccuracies, and basic arithmetical errors. Now, don't get me wrong. There's been some constructive debate through our local area councils and as we've gone through the scrutiny process. And I'd like to take all of those who've taken the time to attend and go through our plans. We've used that constructive feedback to update some of our proposals where relevant. But fundamentally, our approach to budget setting is and will continue to be different to previous years. They focus on doing the right thing for the people we serve. The budget proposals you see before you today are based on a prudent and considered approach. They are based on proposals that can actually be delivered. Since June last year, we've been working hard to bring forward achievable budget proposals that deliver savings and have tangible benefits for the whole county. Quite frankly, we've been astonished and shocked by how the budget has been worked through in previous years, how savings have been identified, and if and how those savings have ever been delivered. The budget position we inherited from the previous administration was far from ideal. Their package of budget proposals that were brought forward this time last year were unachievable, despite what's been claimed. If we'd continued with those plans, we would have indeed had to find £65 million plus inflationary increases plus cost pressures. This was simply unachievable and fundamentally flawed. So where's this black hole from, the £65 million Labour black hole? Well, they left us with a £30 million savings target to start with, which they didn't identify, even during the election campaign. Surprise, surprise. There was a £16 million package of unspecified savings in last year's budget, in this year and next year's financial years. They never identified them, and they never came clean with the electorate in May where those savings were coming from. There was about a £20 million capital repayment on loans to Arch They've never come clean about that, and they still won't admit what's part of proper financial planning. The budget gaps for adult services, budget gaps for children's services, and then we get the knotty problems of Arch and active Northumberland that we've just been talking about. What we're presenting today are actually the facts, and we propose savings that actually add up. We literally went back to basics, stopped Labour's plans which do not add up, and went back to the drawing board and started with a clean sheet. That was the right thing to do. The excesses and wanton mismanagement of the 4 years of Labour continue to both shock and surprise at the seriousness of their actions. Not only was last year's budget a work of fiction and not delivered, we're still waiting for Labour's proposed saving proposal, but the accounts for this authority for the last year of Labour's time in office were the first time ever to be set as qualified by our external auditors. The first set of qualified accounts ever. On our first day, we were able to stop the waste of many millions on the crazy plan to move County Hall to Ashington. And then we discovered that under the Labour leader's watch, the council had plans to lend a developer friend £75 million for a housing scheme that didn't even have planning permission. And that the council was still working on lending a further £8.5 million of public money for the Elf Village at Alnwick Castle, on one of the richest hereditary estates in the country. More recently, Councillor Davies' Ponzi scheme to speculate hundreds of millions of council taxpayers' funds on shopping centres and the like has been exposed by our audit committee to be the massive scam that it is. A huge potential financial risk to this authority with no discernible benefit. In fact, with an annual cost of about £600,000 a year. And all the while, the goings-on at Arch continue to shock and stun in equal measure. A massive write-off of public money to the Ashington Football Club property of £1.4 million, and the revelation that the cost per seat in the new stand, built with public money, is the second highest in the whole country, only a little behind the leather-clad seats in the Arsenal's luxury accommodation for millionaires at the Emirates. I'm sure Grant and Dave are really proud of that. And today we have laid bare the failings in relation to the council-sponsored leisure trust, Active Northumberland. In terms of the budget, we need to be clear that Labour's plans for our leisure centres were to reduce the council's payments to zero. The result of their failed policy would have been to effectively bankrupt the whole service, resulting in there being insufficient money to pay the hundreds of employees there, and ultimately the closure of most of our leisure centres. And it's a bit rich for Councillor Davey to moan about what Active Northumberland's future plans are, when under his stewardship they wouldn't have been existing at all. And we're stepping in with a rescue package of £2 million for this year alone. Unfortunately, I don't think that all of the bad news is out there yet. And yet we still have a Labour leadership in total denial that there was anything wrong. My advice would be to stop blaming officers, fess up, take responsibility and move on. We're clear a fresh look has been necessary. We've set about a process of zero-based budgeting and establishing the real need in our services, particularly those that serve the most vulnerable in our county, primarily across adult social care and children's services. This prudent and considered approach we've taken will help stabilise core services by diverting resources to where they're most needed. We've plugged significant and inherited cost pressures, notably in adult and children's social care, to maintain essential frontline services for this year and the increased demand for looked after children and the elderly that we see. Simply put, we've continued growth in the demand for council services, and that's combined with the requirement to baseline budgets for under-resourced statutory services, as well as the significant budget gaps left by Arch and Active Northumberland. But the stark reality is that we still need to balance the books and save £65 million over the next 4 years. And that's going to be really challenging for us all as a council. Of course, we have bold and ambitious plans for the future, but we need to get our own accounts in order first. By doing this, we'll be in a much better place for the future, and we will support a thriving local economy and deliver value for money for the communities we serve, and we'll do the right thing. We are proposing savings of £8.2 million for the coming year, rising to the full £65 million over the term of the medium-term financial plans. That's over the next 4 years. Some have criticised the modest saving proposals this year, but I'd argue that we need time to work through a series of service reviews to deliver achievable and measured savings, and we'll do that over the course of the coming year. One measure that I'm particularly proud to announce is the scrapping of Labour's post-16 charge for school transport of £600 a year. No less than Labour's teenage tax. This was a manifesto promise of ours, as we are absolutely committed to maintaining a fair access to education and equal treatment for young people wherever they live across our county. This year has been very much about putting things right, protecting essential services, and plugging historic cost pressures through increased demand in services. But service demand will continue, whether that's repairing roads, looking after the most vulnerable people as people live longer and have more complex needs. The next 3 years will be more challenging and have a significant effect on the way we deliver services. However, we're determined to stabilise core services by diverting resources to where they're most needed. There is no doubt we've had to take some difficult decisions. We reluctantly propose increasing council tax by 2.99% to actually help us protect those vital daily local services. That said, we're still very much forward-looking and ambitious for the future of our county. Our capital programme, the biggest ever in this county, will invest £588 million in physical infrastructure like new schools, transport and highways improvements, as well as new homes across Northumberland. These are all priorities for the council, and the programme reflects this. Vanity projects, speculative and high-risk investments are no more. Targeted investments will be based on sound and prudent financial management and return on investment. Our capital programme is strengthened, of course, by the securing of the North of Tyne devolution deal, bringing in up to £600 million over 30 years. Combined with new powers, the deal will generate £1.1 billion for the local economy, create 10,000 jobs, and leverage in more than £2.1 billion of private sector investment. There is no denying that this deal represents to us a once-in-a-lifetime chance to take local decisions about our future and to provide more and better opportunities for everyone. This is boosted further by our negotiations of the Borderlands deal, which will bring new life into some previously neglected areas of North and West Northumberland. And we'll look hard to see how we can get the best deal for all of our communities right across the county. Over the coming years, we pledge to continue investing in Northumberland's future and making sure that we get a fair deal for the whole of our county, one that truly works for everyone. I therefore seek your approval to proceed with our budget plans outlined, and this will allow us to deliver equitable savings, protect vital services, and do the right thing for Northumberland. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Davey thinks that the corporate plan is a good plan. He said that the Active Northumberland report was a good report. We're going for a hat-trick with the budget. Councillor Jackson has set out the position we've inherited very, very clearly and explained how we're going to do the right thing for the people of Northumberland. But before we go into more detail, I'd just like to sort of set out a few things and dispel a few myths. In preparing for today, not surprisingly, we've had a look out on social media to see what's out there and the claims that are being made ahead of the budget. And I'd just like to sort of pick on a few. I've gone to the Northumberland Labour Group Facebook page and blog, and I've since the 1st of January, and we've sort of looked at the articles, 17 things we found that are just completely incorrect. I'm just going to talk about 5 or 6 now, but I just want to, because I think it's important that we debate the budget in the context of accurate information. The first claim, I was shocked to discover that it costs £3 million a year to heat this building. It just seemed, I mean, I thought it might be £1 million or £500,000, but £3 million. So we've looked at that. The true figure is 225,692. That's the total bill for gas and electricity for this building. So it's not just the heating, it's powering the computers, it's doing everything else. So it's only out by a factor of 13. The second claim is that the Conservative administration has decided to forego the Arch dividend, and that figure is variously reported. 4.8 million is the lowest I've seen, 25 million is the highest I've seen. So somewhere between 4.8 million and 25 million, and the claim is that that money is available from Arch to spend on providing council services. That's just simply not true. There has been no dividend from Arch to the council. We discussed this yesterday at the area debate. We discussed it at the local area council. There's been reports written on it. It's been reported to the audit committee, in which there are Labour members sitting, and people just seem not prepared to accept the fact there has been no dividend. Claim 3. There's been a couple of claims around chief execs, and one was that the previous chief exec was paid, well, I think in one thing it says £1 million, in another thing it says £1.5 million. I think the disappointing thing about that is, first of all, it's not accurate. I can't say what it is. It was subject to a pink paper, but that's clearly a massive exaggeration. And it's disappointing that members that have seen the pink paper, which is confidential information, then go out and wildly exaggerate it in the press. And that just creates, it's not the right context for a proper debate of serious budget, £790 million a year this council is spending, and we're basing it on sort of inaccurate information. The current chief exec's salary is being quoted in these Labour blogs, and it says for 2 days a week, when in fact the Labour group knows that that's not true. It's for 5 days a week. Said for 5 days a week, and it's actually for 2 days a week. So it's inaccurate. It's just another unnecessary exaggeration. And then we've talked about this already. We've talked about the transactional services, and we've had debate about the benefits that might bring to the county in an important year when we're delivering universal credit changes. And then I read on the Northumberland Labour blog that 200 jobs are moving out of the county. Again, that was subject to a pink paper. It was in the white paper that those jobs were staying in Northumberland and Newcastle's jobs were coming into Northumberland. But it was reported as Northumberland's jobs going out of Northumberland. Total opposite of the truth. Why? We don't need to do that. Let's have a better debate than that. And then finally, the claim on the Labour blog that we've had, that the external audit has given a clean bill of health to last year's accounts. I mean, that's just, again, clearly not true. We've got minutes of the audit committee on the 22nd of November confirmed that the external auditor could not conclude that Arch, which is a company wholly owned by the council, had taken decisions in line with sound governance. That doesn't sound to me like a clean bill of health. He also went on to say that an asset in Ashington Community Football Club had to be revalued from £1.9 million to £400,000, taking £1.5 million off the balance sheet of Arch and therefore of the council. So the list goes on. I mean, there were 17 different things. All I'm saying is that can we please just have a proper debate based on proper information and go forward. I will come to every council meeting and I'll correct any errors publicly. And I just think we just need to raise our game. The people that live here really should expect that, and should be given to them. So we've presented a budget, in challenging circumstances, that we believe is prudent, and it demonstrates our ambition to improve the lives of all of our residents in the county. We're doing some key things. We want to increase enterprise, increase the income that comes into the county. We want to support education and deal with some of those disparities. We want to support health. We want to provide better core services. We want to run a more efficient organisation, and we want to address the failings and the inequities of the previous administration. So I'd urge you to support today's budget. Thank you.
Now, I have indication from one member that he wants to speak, but I'll take Councillor Bridget, who indicated first, and then I've got Councillor Davey.
Wow, I'm amazed. I'm happy for the Leader of the Opposition if you wish to go first. No. I just wanted to raise, I'm actually standing up, I was hoping we were going to have a bit more of a debate, because I don't
sit down if you want.
At this point in time, I don't know how I'm going to vote. I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say, but I want to raise 2 points. And one of them I raised at the Northern Area Local Council meeting, and that was directed to Councillor Sanderson, and that is the highways budget. It is the single biggest issue right now for my residents, is the state of the roads currently. And the portfolio holder that's just spoken mentioned facts and figures about what money's being spent where. And I like facts and figures. And some of the claims that have been made about investment in highways, that money, regardless of who was running County Hall, would have been invested anyway. There has been extra money put in, but the majority of that money has come from central government. And I hope that going forward we will lobby and we will pursue central government as vigorously as possible to get more money out of them, because the recent report that I've read this week from the LGA shows how much Highways England and other major capital road infrastructure is getting spent on it. £1 million per mile, but rural councils are getting £21,000 per mile over the next 4 years. So the highways budget, and it's something I'm going to raise time and time again, because we had a report come to us about 3 or 4 years ago, and it highlighted that the backlog in terms of the A roads in Northumberland that we control, the B roads, the C roads, and the unclassified roads, the backlog was somewhere between, and I hope that you will vigorously fact check this, because I have the report as well, was at the time between 250 and 270 million pounds. And the money that we are getting from central government to deal with that is dealing, it's not even dealing with the problems we have now, let alone the backlog. We need more investment. I raised it at the Northern Area Committee meeting, and I have no issue saying it. Just filling in the potholes or using the jet sprayer is not good enough, particularly at this time of year. It needs to be a proper job. It needs to be a full resurface. The other thing I want to raise as well is the post-16 transport. The post-16 transport is a massive thing for families in my area, particularly families, which I have a number in my area, where they have 2 children in post-16 education. And I want to raise a point, and it's been raised time and time again. Central government now require young people to stay on in education until the age of 18. My opinion is, and has always been, that central government should fund the transport for that. If they require those young people to stay on in whatever form of education, central government should fund it. If they do not, though, as an authority, should we have the ability to help them, we should. And that is one of the reasons why I am in 2 minds of how I'm going to vote today. But I want to hear what other members have to say, and I look forward to hearing that.
Right, I've got Councillor Grant Davey.
Thank you. Well, Chair, I hardly need to introduce our budget, because you have all obviously read it because you disagree with it. But it's in here. It's our medium-term financial plan, and this is its 2nd year. Now, we didn't manage it in its 1st year. We set it, but you managed it. And what you did there was you actually immediately got yourselves into a black hole through the decisions that you made. Without a doubt you did, because we didn't manage any of this budget at all. You stood on the platform there in your lovely camel-coloured suit in June and said, the former chief executive has left us in a strong and stable position financially. We also had, information back from the auditor to say that the base budget was correct. Base budget wasn't correct a few weeks later when you suddenly created a black hole. And you didn't come back to this council. You immediately lost 35 million in a period from May this year until now on a budget that we didn't work on. You were working on it. And what you did not do is you did not do what we did when we first got in. When we first got in, we found problems with the budget. They weren't as big as the problems that you created, but we immediately went for an emergency budget of £4 million to help certain departments of this council. You should have went for an emergency budget, and you wouldn't be in the position you're in, and you would simply be looking for £30 million plus over the next 4 years, which are the cuts from your government. And that's where you should be looking, at your own government's cuts. So let's have a little look at some of the things that's in your budget that aren't in our budget that you've been working to for the full financial year this year. In your budget, let's have a look at the council. This is a single unitary council. A single unitary council that the Liberals took on first of all and then helped by yourselves when you formed a coalition. But the Liberals carried this council from being a set of districts and a county council into a single unitary council. We carried the single unitary council on with budgets that actually matched the whole of the county. In your own ward, we decided that we would deliver you a new leisure centre and a brand new high school and help with other schools there, because in your ward you needed it, Councillor Jackson. Those schools were necessary. We cannot pick a vote up in your ward. We probably couldn't find a candidate for your ward, never mind pick a vote up, and yet we decided that we should invest in that area because that area needed it. And our budget right across this county is about area-based need. Your budget is not. It's a budget that splits the council. It's for the few and not the many, just to vote, you know. So now we'll get things onto the table here now. You've got one or two good things in it, but not much. And because you didn't go for an interim budget, and you've now got this black hole. So you've got a plan. You've stood up and said how good your plan is and how you're going to manage to take 65 million out, except you've only got 53 million in your budget for your reductions. So when you're adding your sums up, make sure you've got a pen and pencil with you. My problem with this is, and it's the problem of most people who might have worked in local government over the years, this is a fully fixed budget. Now, some people like to work with a fully fixed budget, but if you have problems with a fully fixed budget, you have real problems. If you take a look at the budget that we had provided for the previous 4 years and now this 4 years, we had some flexibility for departments. And it's a damn good job we did have that flexibility, because when it rained in Hexham and in the Tyne Valley, where that flexibility was really needed. Other departments' budgets had to be drawn into other than the department that was doing the clean-up. The money came back eventually, and the money was replaced into their budgets. But with fully fixed budgets, you have major problems. And what you end up with is you can end up with growth in some areas where you weren't actually planning growth at the start of your budget period, and cutbacks in areas where you think you should have supported them better. Now, we know through some of the stuff that you've got within your budget today that you've already thought about that. Because you do think a little bit. I'm sure when you're floating the duck in front of you in the bath, you have a bit, think to yourself, oh, maybe if I should do this or do that. And straight away you've got £700,000 for spying the cab equipment for the DLO. That's because the DLO will be run down by this budget, and you're going to work them to the bone using spying the cab equipment. £700,000 you've got in there for it. You've got to remember that you've also dropped 240 million from our original plan in capital expenditure. Now that 240 million was what shared equally the capital expenditure across this county, because in the main it was in the southeast of the county. It was to do the town centre work in areas such as Blythe, such as Ashington, and places like that, including Bedlington, where I think they conned you last night and they're only going to spend half the money that we promised to spend on you. So you need to be thinking where your bread's buttered when you vote this in. I can tell you, I can tell you that is within the papers that Arch hold and the council hold. So what we ended up with is, you've got a post-16 transport scheme coming in, probably great for rich people in the countryside who can cart their kids to, afford to cart their kids to places. But let's be quite realistic. When we took it out the last time, the choice for the Labour group on this council was, do we cut £7 million worth of jobs each year, or do we stop post-16 transport? And we chose to save jobs. That's exactly where we are. Your budget cuts a fortune out of different areas. Jobs will go. You've decided to only set aside £200,000 for planning appeals. At the end of this 4 years, that £200,000 will look like a drop in the ocean. You've set a figure, or you're hoping to set a figure, of just over 700 houses a year to be built by developers, and yet you've got thousands of houses in train already, which, if you try to stop them, they're going to win those by appeal, because you've got no core strategy to help with your plans in the longer term. Your whole budget is based on supposition. You've got things in there that you haven't even, you've got very little chance of getting. We'll talk about the Better Care Fund. It says in your budget, we're lobbying hard for the Better Care Fund. Hey, and I hope you get it, mate, because we do need it. And we would support you wholeheartedly if you need us to help lobby with you. The problem you've got is, it's not locked in, but it's in your budget. While I'm on the subject of health, we're partners with a clinical commissioning group that's £45 million in debt that isn't even recorded or even mentioned within your medium-term financial planner budget. Now, it might not be our debt, but they are our partners. They affect adult care, they affect health and well-being, and yet you've got nothing in there. Now, part of the money that we told you about, the emergency budget, helped the CCG in its early days. You've got nothing in, so I don't know whose debt it is. If it is the council's debt and we're responsible for it in any way, you need to be telling us that, because you have nothing in there to help the health of this county at a CCG level. On the formula for active Northumberland, of course, I do like this sporting and development model, because I've had a good look at it. And what we'll support when we get back in, because we will get back in, we'll support a wet side proper leisure centre for the Bedlington area, because if you take the size of the 3 parishes, there's enough people there to support one. So you might be going to close facilities now, and facilities that are needed, but I can tell you the formula means that a wet side proper leisure centre could be built in that area in what we call Bedlington Shire.
Grand.
Sorry?
You've got under a minute.
I've got under a minute. Right, well, we'll just start with 1 or 2 things that you've said. We'll come back to the football club. The football club, Wansbeck District Council left money for it. The change in the formula was non-material, reported by the external auditor. So, what you've been spouting has just been very, very misleading. And the money for the retirement of Steve Mason, the only thing I've seen, because I don't read that blog very much, the only thing I've seen on it says it was in the Hexham Courant. So, we don't deal with the Hexham Courant. They won't even speak to us. So they must be speaking to your mates. You've seen the pink papers, we didn't. So thanks very much, Chair. Support our budget. Forget this waste of space that's going on here, and make sure that we actually deliver things for the whole county and not just for the west and north.
Right, you were slightly over, Grant, but I'll give it. Yeah.
Sorry. If I could just respond to a few of those points. I mean, the first point you made was around the £65 million black hole that we've created. I don't think we really had time to do that, but very helpfully, you've set it out. There, your blog, very nice graphic. The blue's the wrong colour for the Conservative blue, but you've said £30 million for scrapping Labour's business plans for saving. Okay, sorry. Well, I mean, but this is the Northumberland Labour Group blog, which describes itself as the official blog of the Labour Group of Councillors on Northumberland County Council. And last time I checked, you were the leader of that group of councillors. Although we have heard rumours of challenge. So you've presented that £30 million, and you've talked in one of your blogs about the fact that the auditor has said, has stressed that as a risk, saying that there was significant risk attached to the phasing of savings, that the £30 million were required in the final two years of the financial plan. And you've presented that in your blog, and Councillor Dale mentioned it recently at the Tynedale Local Area Council, and you've presented it as our risk about our medium-term financial plan. Now, it was presented to the Audit Committee on the 22nd of November. On the 22nd of November, we hadn't written a medium-term financial plan, so it can only be about your medium-term financial plan. So when you say that the significant risk, you're talking about your own plan. We've talked about coalition, and you've made a point about a coalition between the Conservatives and the Liberals. I wasn't around them, but as I'm aware, there was no coalition. But I have seen a screen capture of a Northumberland County Council article in the press, from the press department, basically after the 2013 election, confirming, with Grant Davey confirming that there was going to be a coalition between the three then independents and the Labour group. We've talked about, you've talked about a fully funded budget and having some contingency. And I agree contingency is really important, and there is a lot of contingency in our budget for the important things. So flood events being a great example. The sort of contingency that I don't want is £150 million a year with delegated authority for the leader of the council and the leader and the chief exec. So that's the sort of contingency we shouldn't have. That was in last year's budget, £450 million, nearly £500 million of basically non-identified spending and non-identified borrowing. And that's the sort of thing we won't do under this administration. And finally, you've talked about the issue with Ashington Community Football Club being not material. £1.5 million to me is material. Thank you.
Right, I have, because we are talking about the budget as presented by Councillors Jackson and Oliver. Grant, you mentioned a budget, but it hasn't been seconded, or you haven't put it forward. The members here do not have sight of it, so I'll go to Gordon Castle. Councillor Castle. Second
What?
going to Gordon.
Speaking, thank you.
I'll take legal advice. Hang on, Gordon. I'll take legal advice because we should have sight of that. Go on, Gordon.
Do you want this? Sorry, I wasn't.
Thank you, Chairman. It's obviously very difficult for members to consider any amendment in such a wide-ranging item of business as the annual budget, but I'm not clear what exactly your amendment is, Councillor Davey, in relation to the main recommendations that have been publicised within the summons, and perhaps you could assist the meeting with some further clarification.
This here, looking forward, is the medium-term financial plan that your council, your Tory council, has been working to since May 2017. It was produced this time last year as the 4-year medium-term plan. We didn't get the opportunity to work to it. You've been working to it. Our amendment to the budget you put out today is to return to this medium-term financial plan.
Is that legal? Well, you know, we were always told if we had to have an alternative budget, it had to be presented to officers, etc., and presented to the council. It hasn't been presented to the council.
Chairman.
Yeah, but I think when it's your budget that we inherit, it's called inheritance.
Chairman, there's no set explanation, even in the budget process, for consideration of amendments to the recommendation in relation to the annual budget. There is reference in the member and officer protocol to confidential discussions being held with the chief executive with the opposition group in relation to any alternative budget proposals. The clear expectation, though, in relation to that reference is that those proposals should be publicised so that members within the council can give them full and due consideration. Now, Councillor Davey may claim that the previous publication is sufficient publication in relation to his amendment, and I'll make no comment on that. It's just a matter for the meeting as to whether or not they're happy, if Councillor Ledger's seconding the amendment, they're happy to vote on that, they have sufficient information. You'll be aware that there's a time pressure on the council to set a budget within a certain time period. I think it's the 11th of March, and we wouldn't want to disrupt the administrative processes of the council by having to reconvene a meeting. So you might, members, take a pragmatic view of the amendment that's just been proposed by Councillor Davey, that you have sufficient information and that you can vote on that amendment. But that, again, Chairman, is a matter for the meeting.
Councillor Flux, just on this subject before we move
It is on this subject. There was an election in May 2017 and an awful lot of councillors lost their seats and an awful lot of new councillors were elected. How would those councillors who weren't on the council at that time have sight of the budget, given that they weren't part of that decision making?
Councillor Davey, I want to get progress because you know.
Chair, I don't need the microphone. I'll just give Councillor Flux the answer. You've been working on it since May.
That's
if you haven't read it, what is it done does your...
I think that's uncalled for.
Well, the language of a set of dunders, I think, might backfire on you. But I'm quite prepared to take that as an amendment. It's been seconded by Councillor...
set of dunders, Chair.
Would you?
The amendment is the budget you've been working on since May.
Right, I'll take your amendment as your alternative budget that's seconded by Councillor Ledger. So that is an amendment. So I think if we go to see if that amendment goes through, would that be reasonable to say? Yeah. Right, so we're going to vote on the amendment. Do you want a named?
It has to be a named vote, Chairman, in relation to the prevailing secondary legislation. So if I could just... Sorry.
There's two comments before we go. As the authors of the...
Okay, I mean, we sort of... Yes, me again, sorry. Apologies. Finance is in my portfolio. I think we've had a look, obviously, at the at last year's budget, and we thought this might be coming. So I'd just like to sort of spell out a few reasons why, if the vote to consider the alternative budget, why we shouldn't consider that alternative budget. First of all, I've just mentioned £150 million a year of basically sort of unregulated, ungoverned spending. So I think that should be enough, £450 million over 3 years. But there are other things as well. There are prior savings that haven't been realised, and we have got the benefit of some hindsight now. Prior savings of 4.8 million that haven't been realised. We've had a constant children's services overspend of £3 million, which hasn't been rebased. We've got minimum revenue protection provision for arch loans of 6.7 million that haven't been included. We've got recurrent known pressures in leisures and tourism of 1.2 million. In fact, we've just heard today it's actually a lot more than that. So there's a few good reasons why that budget, frankly, isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got an opposition group in total denial We've kind of had it for the last 3 hours, haven't we, really? And it's just getting more and more of a worn record. Why don't you just admit all of the things that you've actually got seriously wrong over the last 4 years? As a council, we're trying to make progress. We're trying to make Northumberland a better place. So just put the past behind you and admit that you got things seriously wrong. Last year's budget, as we've been through before, was very much a sham exercise. A lot of the figures in there were totally undeliverable, as we found. And if we continued along that path for another year and a half, which we probably would from now on, this county council would be in a serious mess. And I talked before about being able to pay the wages of people who actually provide services for this council. That's the seriousness of what we're talking about here. There are hundreds of people working for Active, for example, who we wouldn't be able to pay the wages next week if we agreed this amendment. So I very much think that we should vote it down and get on with the real business in hand.
Councillor Grimshaw, I'm not wanting you to speak. I've got a list before you, so I want to get traction on this, and I'll take the amendment.
Chairman, you can't. Well, then you'll have to adjourn the meeting and reconvene it.
Can we vote on whether we accept an alternative budget?
Yeah.
Say again?
Chair, can I make it easy for you on a point of order? Just look at the numbers game. Vote on the amendment, vote on the substantive motion, and let us go home.
Chair, can I have a point of order? Sorry, I feel like Elvis Presley here. All right, thank you. Right, there we go. It's a point. It's a point of order, and it is based on something Councillor Flux said. There are members in here who've not had the opportunity to read your wonderful work of fiction, and as such, as a public official, as a publicly elected member, how on earth can you expect them to vote one way or the other on something they don't know anything about from your budget? You should have presented it in advance of this meeting for us to do it. So, Chair, what I would say is that I think, and it's for those new members who are new to this council, whether they feel comfortable voting for or against something that they have never seen. That's the point of order, Chair.
Fair point, but I want to move forward. Grant has given us a pathway, which is that we're going to vote on the amendment, and I've taken advice on that. So the amendment, as you put it, that we haven't seen, and so, no, come on. Come on, this is serious business, and we're being filmed. There's people out there who want to know why it's delaying tactic. Right, all those in favour of the amendment?
Sorry, Chairman, can I just make one point? I just want to address the issue that I addressed prior to the commencement of this item, and that was in relation to the presence of members in the chamber. Now, by my reckoning, all of the members present were present during the entirety of the item, with the exception, and I'm sorry to single her out, but Councillor Dale. In my view, she was only away for a matter of a few seconds, and I would invite the meeting to accept that she can participate and vote on the amendment and the substantive item.
Agreed? Right, you're in. Right, so we take the
amendment, Chairman.
I take the amendment. Those in favour or those against? So we'll do a name vote as we have to. You read them out, Liam.
Yes. Councillor Armstrong. Against. Councillor Baughan.
Against.
Councillor Benyon.
Against.
Councillor Bridget. Councillor Campbell. Councillor Carty. Councillor Castle.
Against.
Councillor Sesford. Councillor Clark. Councillor Crosby. Councillor Dale. Councillor Daly.
Against.
Councillor Grant Davy. Councillor Susan Davy. Councillor Dodd.
Against.
Councillor Dunbar. Councillor Dunn. Councillor Flux.
Against.
Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gobin, Councillor Grimshaw, Councillor Hill, Councillor Homer, Councillor Horncastle, Councillor Hutchison, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jones, Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Lang, Councillor Laurie, Councillor Ledger, Councillor Moore, Councillor Murray, Councillor Nesbitt, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Parry, Councillor Pattison, Councillor Pidcock, Councillor Purvis, Councillor Quinn, Councillor Reid, Councillor Renner Thompson, Councillor Richards, Councillor Rickerby, Councillor Riddle, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Roughhead, Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Seymour, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Stowe, Councillor Swinburne, Councillor Thorne, Councillor Towns, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Watson, Councillor Wearmouth, Councillor Webb, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, members.
Just leave it there, you need to do the result. Right, I have the result. For that amendment, there were 21. Against the amendment, there were 36, and abstentions 4. So the amendment falls. So now I have Councillor Gordon Castle on the substantive motion of the budget.
I will be brief, just to satisfy Councillor Sanderson. Thank you, Chairman. What I was going to mention, first I'll say I'm curious to hear the description of our budget as a fully fixed budget, implying that what came before us and what we've just voted against was not a fully fixed budget. In fact, it wasn't fixed at all. Indeed, it's important to understand figures. I know it's difficult, but sometimes it's very important. And the fact is that our budget adds up. And we do hope that the pressures that all budgets are always under enable us to see it through. Of course they're always under pressure, but speculative hopes that we can save 30 million without saying where or how are frankly a bit absurd. I think most of us would agree to that. It's not what I was actually intending to go ahead and say. What I wanted to say was that I read in the Newcastle Journal, which I do not claim to be the best analyst of political matters, but it was were facts and figures, and I was a bit concerned because this was not a blog claiming something daft. It was a major paper making a statement, and I want to ask, and I think it might be Councillor Oliver to answer it if I may. It said that between 10-11 and this year that this council had lost 17% of its spending power this year and next year compared to 10-11. That concerned me because it's not what I understood the case to be. And I wonder, for clarity and to ensure that the public know what the facts are, because newspapers do have, an impact, and that one in particular does. So I want to hear, if I may, what the council actually thinks the case to be. Thank you.
Once again, apologies.
Oliver always asks for more.
I don't. I haven't heard that since I was 8. I haven't got the figures to hand, but it was an issue that we dealt with at local area councils. I don't know if you can recall. We showed a graph that showed the total income of the council since I think 2018. 2013, 2012, something like that. And it basically, it was a bar chart, and it showed the amount going up from, I think, around about 832 million, if I recall. It's not a precise figure. Sorry, 732 up to about 790 something in the current year. So that's the total income. The sources change every year. So it's true that there is less from central government, but then central government is allowing us to keep a higher proportion of business rates and etc. and council tax. So that it's the way it's funded, and there are more houses in Northumberland paying council tax, etc. So the story that the actual total income of the council has fallen, and I've heard various figures, 17%, but I remember sitting in the West Area Committee last year when the previous chief exec did a presentation. He said there'd been a 40% cut in council funding. That clearly is just not true. It's not borne out by the facts at all. Council fund, the total income of this council has risen.
Is that clear? Right, Councillor Reid.
Been a long day, hasn't it?
Hasn't it?
Right. So, is that on? Yes, it is. I don't know where to start, really. I was a bit disappointed because I had been quite cheered up by the whole thing to know that to have the leader and his team come out to the area councils and deliver the budget, which I thought was what I used to do, and I think that's what politicians should do. I think it was a bit remiss of the previous administration to delegate that to officers. So I was pleased to see that, and I was pleased to see when these pieces of paper came through that it all added up. But what disappointed me is that you've sunk back into, somebody on the top table there was talking about we shouldn't be looking backwards. You've spent all afternoon looking backwards. Yeah. You've slung insults at each other for 2 hours. This isn't about what's happened in the past. It's about what you intend to do in the future. And that's why this time last year, said he looking back, that I was so incensed that I got up from the seat and sat at the back when you had that ridiculous video of nothing to do with the budget or the cuts or anything. It was a puff piece about how well the capital budget had been spent. Well, it's not good enough. And what I don't like about this is that you've said in confidence that it's right and everything's going to be fine, but there are just far too many reviews in Appendix 7. None of it. You have not identified, actually, half of your £8 million you have not identified as proper savings, the reviews. Now, if you haven't started the review yet, it's going to be October, November. You're going to come back and you're going to say, well, we've found half of the money, or we've found 3/4 of it. So it adds up on paper, but I'm telling you now, you're not going to be able to deliver this, and you're going to be dipping into reserves, and you're going to be moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. And this time next year, you're going to have to find 15 or 16 million, not the 11 you think you're going to need to find. You need to face up to that. And there's a couple of things in this Appendix 7 that just astonish me. £1 million on the second line down on adult services. £1 million is going to be found from the review of individual risk management. £1 million. Now that has got to be people's jobs, or it's got to be people not receiving services. You cannot take £1 million out of something without affecting somebody's service. And then 4 or 5 lines further down, management of vacancies, £1.7 million. So are we saying that, is that management speak for redundancies, or is it those empty spaces in the organisation at the moment are just going to be deleted? And then the other big one on that first page is the reduction in pension fund deficit lump sum payment, £900,000. Now that's just plain and simple, that's just a windfall, isn't it? You know, the stock market's done well, the pension doesn't need £900,000. But the next review, we've all had it, the next review is, oops, we need 1.5 million, we need 2 million. So that's not, you haven't banked that, you've kind of just borrowed it. So the whole schedule in Appendix 7, which is full of lovely ways of where you're going to save money, everything in there is a review. Nothing is solid, and that's what I'm worried about. Now, it's fine. It's all going to go in the council tax bill. That's great. It balances on paper, and anybody looks at it, oh, that's lovely. But actually, finding that is going to be difficult. And then there was just a few questions I had. Management of vacancies, done that. I asked about the 106 money. If you look on, I think it's Appendix 10, is it? The balances and provisions. That, I asked about this at Scrutiny. It goes down and down and down and down. And I said, well, why isn't it going up? And I forget which one of the wise men it was. But I was told, well, you can't say what it's going to be because that's the future. And yet, you're allowing £100,000 of income from technical services. So you're going to be charging somebody £100,000 for something that you haven't identified. So you can write that and say, that's a saving, but you can't assume what's going to go into the 106 budget. So I'm just a little concerned about that. Just another couple of things, and then I'll finish. The capital programme on, I think that's page 83. The member small schemes money. It goes £1,005,000 for a few years, and then it just goes down to £1 million. So was that just a arithmetical error, or? Right. What, a third of a councillor? So that's in 2021. It's £1 million, not £1,005,000. So you need to look at that. You've also got an increase in income at country parks by about £10,000. Well, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And the one thing I wanted to know was, the government are looking at this major road network. There's a consultation out at the moment. Have we actually applied? Are we actually highlighting any roads in that? Are we trying to get money? Well, it would be nice to know, where we are with that, basically.
Glenn?
Good, excellent. So if we could all know that at some point, it'd be really great.
Are you done?
And no, two more things. And another thing, said Colombo. The leader said that the council tax is going up 2.99%, but everybody always forgets, quite conveniently, about the 2%. So the council tax is actually going to go up nearly 5%. It's not going to go up 2%. And the reason that's going up that extra 2% is for social care. And then what really, really boils me is when I hear our great Prime Minister sit there and say, we have solved adult social care, we have found the money. Yeah, they found the money by charging us for it. It is an absolute damn disgrace that the council taxpayers of Northumberland are having to support a national problem. And to hide that in there, there's not been one mention of that 2%. I don't suppose you ever were. So our council tax in Northumberland from this unitary authority is going up 4.99%, not 2.99%. And the last thing was, if you are ever going to do the right thing by the people of Northumberland, do not sign a devolution deal, because it will be the worst thing that has happened to this county in a long, long time.
Point of order, it's not on the agenda.
The leader, in his very fine speech, the leader mentioned at the end and said, we think this is great, and he's absolutely and totally wrong, and it's not 600 million, it's 20 million. In fact, it's only 19 million, because the mayor's office is going to cost you £1 million a year to run.
Right, he's been waiting a long time. No, not you.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just come in. Just a brief comment. And it goes back to a comment which was made earlier on by a member of the Labour group, which was referring to our rural areas and about the rich people who live in the rural areas can afford the teenage tax. What I'm really disappointed about is that for some reason the Labour Party aren't aware of rural poverty. I'm very much aware of urban poverty, and I'm also very much aware of rural poverty as well. And for many years I've sat in this chamber, Chair, with the Labour group telling me that written through their DNA is equality. Well, clearly, when it comes to rural areas, the North and the West and those people affected by the teenage tax, that DNA stands for does not apply. Absolutely. And I think, and it would be really helpful if you could actually apologise for that comment. Secondly, Councillor Reid, I'll name you. Fantastic. I think you actually made a really good point about a budget for the future. Because I'm happy to say to you that I'm proud to support this budget because of the significant investment in schools. We are one of the few local authorities in the country which are still investing significant sums into our school network for new build, extensions, improvements. We've got an SEND consultation, the results of which will be coming out in March. There'll be some stuff which we'll put in around that as well. And more importantly, since this administration came to power in May of last year, there have been 579 new school places created, including in Blythe, in Seaton Valley, and in Morpeth. And that's something that we're proud about and will continue. And finally, I would like to say this, that we've had all this, for the few, for the many, whatever. We are running a council for everyone. Unfortunately, the last Labour leadership actually run its council for its mates and not for the many.
Councillor Pidcock. You've been waiting a long time, Councillor Pidcock. Wait a bit longer, you need the microphone.
I don't need a microphone.
You do, because we do.
If I don't want to use a microphone, I'm not going to use a microphone. Chair, as a preamble, a prelude to this budget meeting, yesterday we were subjected to an hour and a half of meaningless, pompous, pious, Tory-orchestrated propaganda. We were told that our society is classless, presumably on the basis that we have a society where there is equality of opportunity for everyone, an eradication of all privileges, a food bank-free community, an establishment-free society, a community without want, squalor, or injustice. I do not think so. Now to the budget. I've spent a lot of time reading these two documents, and I've come to the conclusion that one of the biggest differences between that one, last year's, and this one, this year's, is last year's didn't have an index. If you look through them and through the recommendations, there are so many similarities. In fact, it's amazing how similar they are. The conclusion I've come to is that last year's document was mainly, if not wholly, written by officers consulting with the political group, just as this one was. And that's why they're so similar. Now, the point I want to make today, that nobody else has made, is about the special relationship between officers of this council and members of this council. And I want to make this point, that the more the Tory propaganda is outing us as a Machiavellian plot devised and hatched by a subversive, profligate, boarding on the criminal Labour administration, determined to hide the truth, to execute a wicked agenda, whatever the cost. Now, I've spent 3 hours listening to you people. I have 4 minutes, and you can't do anything but scoff and ridicule, which is outrageous.
You've got 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. So,
You don't have to take them.
I'm saying this to members sincerely, that if your remarks about the past administration are not about the Labour Party, but they're about the team that ran this council for 4 years. A team consisting of officers and members. A team of officers who are hard-working, conscientious, and to whom we owe such a massive debt of gratitude. So you can't just rubbish the Labour group. The Labour group worked in harmony as a team with officers. And finally, last night, I asked a very important man from Arch at the local council whether the development in Bedlington was going to be profitable. The gentleman said that profit was not the motive of Arch, and it never has been. The Arch development in Bedlington was about the services to the people of Bedlington and the wider community, about improving people's life experiences, enhancing the quality of life for the community. These are fundamental socialist principles that drive our agenda and have done in the past and will continue to do so in the future.
I've got Councillor Deal. Councillor Deal. Yeah? Hmm?
Thank you very much. Can I just make one or two remarks before I start? Probably in 2009, not many of you will know, but I put together a whole new budget for the Conservative Party. It took me 4 months, and I budgeted it out from the very beginning right through. And it wasn't until the day the budget was going to council when there was agreement between the Conservatives and Liberal Party, and I have the minutes still of the Conservative meeting and what was said, and I'll pass them on to you so you're aware, and I have them all. I've kept them all. Secondly, just as a cheap bribe about me being member of the Labour Party or part of the Labour administration, can I tell you that when I saw that on the internet or in the newspaper, I walked into Grant Davies' room and I told him what I thought. And also, I've had an apology from the MP. Now, can you just get it very clear? I said to everybody, and I'll say to everybody now, I will work with people as long as they're honest and they have integrity, and I don't get misinformation. And I think all the information, the cheap things that were said, when you have got, I asked a question, and I'm going to bring one up because I've got lots. Councillor Jackson, I asked him how much it was going to cost to do this was in November, how much was it going to cost to redo the county hall? And he said £7 million over 5 years. Well, it's down at the moment as 23. Now, can we just forget it's in the budget and there's 3 being put through again? So can we just forget, because a lot of things in the past have been said, 80 million for the headquarters, etc., etc. Just forget what's been said and let's work forward, because you've got some real issues. And what I would like to say is, very quickly, I do have some issues about this, the social care, looked after children, because this is serious. And as long as we fail to invest in the poor areas, this figure is going to go up and up. And there won't be any money to have nice gardens. There won't be any money for this, because it'll all go on looked after children and social services, because that was where our main issues are going to be, those where our pressures are going to be. I also have concerns about cuts in the fire service. It was promised over and over again by your party that there would be no further cuts in the fire service. In Hayden Bridge, it was said very loudly. Now, I would like to just go on to say that you do have some issues. You're going to find it very difficult, and I know where your problems are going to be. I have an issue about neighbourhood services being chopped, because one of the biggest issues we've got is cleaning the streets, to keep them clean, to keep the gullies empty. And that is manifest throughout this area. And you need to be very careful, and I would suggest you look at how you deliver that service again. You've got the cost of appeals, which haven't been put in. We've already lost one large appeal. There is an issue about you using reserves. And Capita were very clear when they came to the Treasury Management training that actually you should be careful about how you use reserves. You've got permission at the moment, but if you carry on using reserves, they are supporting your borrowing. And that is all in the Treasury Management statement. You've got other risks out there, £3,000. And there's so many things in here. I have Councillor Oliver mentioned about the business rates. We haven't got a full picture of the business rates. And as external audits say each time, it is a real issue. It's a risk to this council. Also, the cost of providing services and savings is a risk to this council. It's all documented. There's nothing, I'm not saying anything that isn't untrue. But what I will say is I'm quite happy to come along and put my views forward and have an input, but it will only be at full council. But I would expect that I want a proper answer at that time.
Oh. Councillor Hill. I think we're going to get to the end.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points and a question, if I may. I think, as Councillor Bridget alluded to as well, it's I've been undecided on this budget, and it's difficult. Obviously, if you're in the administration, you're duty bound to vote for it, and if you're the main opposition, to oppose it. Obviously, it's a huge document, and there's dozens and in fact hundreds of propositions in that. I think what really is clear this afternoon, though, is that we need a budget. There's two budgets on the table. One has been rejected, and what is very clear is the absolute gulf in financial management and competence between the former administration and the current administration. I mean, I think you're going to have to find new words to describe the hypocrisy, the smoke and mirrors, the weirdness of this sort of denial. It's arguing black as white. It's a very strange situation. One thing I would say, and I've made some specific representations about Berwick, and had some assurances that Berwick will no longer be the forgotten town, which it has all the way through your administration. But I'd make a general point. If somebody knew nothing about this authority but just looked at the 67 different divisions and looked at, for example, the capital programme, and I accept that a lot of this is inherited, they would look and say that there's not a fair split. So can I just ask for assurances that in the coming budgets and as this administration goes on, that there will indeed be a fair deal for everyone?
Right. I agree. I've got.
I love democracy, Chair, but I can live with it.
You wouldn't name, but Councillor Robinson. Then I'm going to.
Simple question none of my residents ask. The money they're paying in goes up and up every year. The services they get diminish every year. They want to know where the money's going.
Paying off debt. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, just to sum up, some questions have been answered. I'll take that one last. The main pressure on the budget is actually down to servicing the huge level of debt we've got as a council. So the level of debt over the last 4 years has actually increased from around about 500 million to about 780. And the cost of that in terms of interest and capital is a major reason for this pressure on the council's budget. The other pressure, and it's the same with all councils up and down the country, is that demand for some of our essential services are going up. So we have more older people that we have to look after, and we have larger calls on our sort of children's social care. And they're kind of major priorities, I would guess, for all 67 councillors here. So we have to absolutely provide those essential services. So they're the main kind of pressures on the budget. Councillor Reid did make some comments. I'm summing up, so you're not allowed to. The leader of the Liberal Democrat group made a few comments, and yeah, he did make those comments in the scrutiny meeting, and we did attempt to answer most of his issues there. I think you mentioned the pensions contribution actually reducing next year. Well, that's a recommendation, an independent recommendation, and it's been through the pensions panel. And actually, that our contributions to pensions as an authority for our staff, so they get good pensions when they leave, has actually been increasing on a fairly regular basis over the last 10 or 15 years. So it's still a significant sum of money that we're putting into pensions. You did talk about the Section 106 funding, and I think there's a bit of sort of lack of understanding about how that works. We can't put Section 106 money into the budget until it's actually promised and sort of written into a legal agreement. So it will be going up over the next 3 or 4 years. I can guarantee that. You mentioned what we're doing for major road networks, and that's a very important issue for us as an administration. We're absolutely committed to lobbying government to dual the A1 all the way to Berwick and up to Edinburgh as well. The first section of that will obviously be starting in about 2 years' time, has been flagged up already. But we don't think that's enough. We think it should be the whole way through the county, and we will make that clear. We've been lobbying for improvements to the A69, because that link between Newcastle through Northumberland all the way to the west is very important for our county as well. But we're looking at some other transport investments as well. So we're actually looking at the possibility of a Blythe Relief Road, because I know for your particular town that's a real issue. So we're taking it very seriously. And we're working really hard to reintroduce rail passenger services from Newcastle to Seaton Valley, Bedlington, Blythe and Ashington. Yeah, that is highly likely to happen in the next 3 or 4 years. So in terms of Councillor Bridget, roads funding, I think we all know that we've had a really sort of difficult winter. It's been a long winter. The wet weather started in November, and the ground conditions are still terrible. Looks like we're likely to get another really cold spell, possibly with snow next week. So the pressures on our winter services budget have been extreme, but as a county council, we're actually putting extra funding into that. And we put extra funding of £420,000 into road repairs, and that's added to the government's extra amount of £900,000, yeah, making about 1.3 million extra on top of what we've already got in the programme. And we're actually dedicating that money to make longer lasting repairs, and I think you'll be pleased to see that. So the extra amount is all dedicated to cutting out the difficult sections of roadway and patching them so that last at least 4 or 5 years, or possibly even more, rather than just wash out straight away. Councillor Hill makes a very good comment about our commitment to Berwick and the surrounding area and the whole of the north of Northumberland. I'll point you to the Borderlands deal, but more importantly, we undertake to work with you in the Berwick Regeneration Commission, where we're represented by our 3 county councils up there, to actually come out with a programme that will make a real difference to that town and the surrounding area, and that is a clear public commitment from us on that one. I think we've had a long afternoon. I think that we have a realistic budget here. We really do believe that our figures are deliverable, and we've been held to account for that by both the Audit Committee and by the Scrutiny Committees. So I absolutely commend this budget to you as a council and to the people of Northumberland, because actually this brings us all to a better county with a more positive future. We will have the services and the infrastructure that every community needs. So thank you.
Right, let's go straight to the vote. We're voting for the budget. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, yes, we are. You said you would abstain. Right.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Baughan. Councillor Benyon. Councillor Bridget. Councillor Campbell. Councillor Carty. Councillor Castle. Councillor Sesford. Councillor Clark. Councillor Crosby. Councillor Dale. Thank you. Councillor Daly. Councillor Davey, Grant Davey.
Against.
Councillor Susan Davey. Against. Councillor Dodd.
4.
Councillor Dunbar.
4.
Councillor Dunn.
Against.
Councillor Flux.
4.
Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Gibson.
4.
Councillor Gobin.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Grimshaw.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Homer.
4.
Councillor Horncastle.
4.
Councillor Hutchison. Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Kennedy.
Abstain.
Councillor Lang.
Against.
Councillor Laurie.
4.
Councillor Ledger.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Nesbitt.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Parry. Councillor Pattison.
4.
Councillor Pidcock.
Against.
Councillor Purvis.
Against.
Councillor Quinn.
4.
Councillor Reid.
Abstain.
Councillor Renner Thompson.
4.
Councillor Richards.
Against.
Councillor Rickerby.
Abstain.
Councillor Riddle.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Roughhead.
4.
Councillor Sanderson.
4.
Councillor Seymour.
4.
Councillor Simpson.
Against.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stowe.
4.
Councillor Swinburne.
4.
Councillor Thorne.
4.
Councillor Towns.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
4.
Councillor Watson.
4.
Councillor Wearmouth.
4.
Councillor Webb.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Thank you, members.
Getting near the 6 o'clock, but we might do it. For 3 hours I have to.
Sorry. 37 for, 19 against, 5 abstentions.
Right. Look. 37 for, 19 against, 5 abstentions. The budget is carried. Now then. I make it 10 to 6, so I'm going to try and bash on. Before 3 hours, I have to ask you permission to continue. So, item 11. Jeffrey.
Well, Chair, sorry. Yeah, we all know how we found this quite difficult, and had the police commissioner actually come and spoken to us and put forward a case, then I would have been quite happy to accept that it is a good idea, but I don't think it's a good idea that the Police and Crime Commissioner should be co-opted onto the authority. I asked the Scrutiny Committee to move this motion, which they did, and I would hope all of you would support this, because I do not think that this is a fair and equitable way of cultivating a relationship between the council and the police. And I know you want to finish, Chair, but can I just say, what worries me about all of this is the government, because the PCCs have not got enough to do, finding other things for them to do. And what I'm very, very worried about, that at some point there's going to be a move to have a civilian uniformed service, which will be the police, the fire service and the ambulance, all under one organisation. And I think that would be an absolute disaster. Our firemen have trouble enough as it is, because people think they're part of the police, never mind when they actually are part of the police. So anyway, sorry to detain you, Chair.
He's right, though.
I've got Councillor.
Could Karen minute that Councillor Pitcock said that Councillor Reid was right. First time ever.
You've named him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Davey, then I'll go to Councillor Riddle. Yeah.
Chair, I have to totally disagree with that. We have a county fire brigade that I'm very, very proud of, by the way. I think it's marvellous. I did put my face on most of their machinery, and they hated us for it, but that's a different matter. The Police and Crime Commissioner was actually invited by all of the Tyne and Wear councils to join their fire authority. We have a fire brigade. And the Chief Constable also attends their meetings when they hold them. I think it's in Washington where they hold their meetings. The work between the Chief Constable, the Fire Chief and the Police and Crime Commissioner is developing into trying to lower the precept from the Police and Crime Commissioner to councils, and it seems to be a model that the Tyne and Wear authorities are very, very keen on. Here it's just so strange that the whole change in the law, a law that the Tories introduced, has been rejected by the Tories, and they want to keep the Police and Crime Commissioner away from the fire brigade. But the reason that was given was thoroughly wrong. It said in the reason, in the papers that you issued out to us, that the Chief Constable and the Fire Chief collude, so you don't need the Police and Crime Commissioner there. Well, if they're colluding, honestly, the word collude is just the wrong word to use. And I mean, I know our Fire Chief, and I'm sure he's not colluding at all with the Chief of the Police. But you need to rethink this one. You need to say to yourself, shall we have the person who sets the precept that forces up the costs of people in Northumberland left outside of one of the largest things that force the precept up? Let us get the services working together. If there's ever this raging, you are a paramedic and a firefighter and a policeman force ever formed, I'm sure we'll know about it long before it's ever formed. It's not an agenda item at this moment in time. Just get the Police and Crime Commissioner onto our committees. Thank you.
Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Chairman. A few points, really. Yes, we have a great fire service here, and there aren't any cuts to the fire service in the budget. There's actually money going into it. But that's beside the point. What I want to say here is, it's the smallest fire service in England. It's inextricably linked to other services within our county, public protection, licensing, and all of these facets. It is completely and utterly different to the big service that's Tyne and Wear. There is already a strategic collaboration, not a collusion, a collaboration board which I sit on along with the Chief and the Chief of Tyne and Wear and the Chief Constable. We already work together. There was some discussion at that last meeting, and I tell you this, the Police Commissioner demonstrated to me a complete and utter lack of understanding of how a retained fire service worked at all. So I don't think that she would add any value. If she could come here and demonstrate that, then I would be very amenable to that, and I would definitely reconsider. But at the moment, it is a definite no from me.
Right. Do we want to vote on this? All right. All those... Do you want to sum... No?
We're trying to get it done.
I know I am.
So, the recommendation as written, Chair, I do not think it's appropriate this time to have... I do not think it's appropriate at this time to have the Police and Crime Commissioner co-opted on the authority.
Right. Okay. There's the recommendation in front of you. Those in favour, please show. Those against?
Thank you, Chairman.
Any abstentions?
I was out of the
Councillor Dale, are you abstaining? Thank you. That's 40.
That's passed 40 to 15 with 1 abstention. Right, there you go.
Chair.
Yes?
Could the clerk record the Councillor Reid when I vote for once in his life?
Getting like Sunderland, aren't you? Sorry. I've just been advised that when we voted the budget, we did vote for item 2, the council tax setting as well. You happy with that? All right. Annual timetable of meetings. There is a sheet coming round with some new information where it sort of adds some interest, because the first one I changed was the full council that was scheduled for the 2nd of January. Now, so it's moved to the 9th. That's moved to the 9th, but what was on the 9th has had to be moved to different places. I'll highlight that Communities in Place Overview and Scrutiny will be on the 19th of December. That would have been the January meeting. Also, I have to say that Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny will now be, instead of 10:30 start, will now be a 2 o'clock start, so it doesn't clash with Cabinet. And strategic planning will move to a 4 o'clock start, in line with the other planning committees. The case was put that it's, in fact, I'll ask Councillor Horncastle. Planning? What? Yeah?
Right. With the strategic plan committee.
Yes?
Sorry. Thank you. With the strategic plan committee at 6 o'clock and the area plan committee has been at 4, there is some confusion amongst members of the public. And also, the very nature of strategic planning, that the large, very complicated applications, and just a fortnight ago we had one application lasted an hour and a half. It does mean that people are in this chamber can be very late at night. And because it's strategic planning for the whole of the county, people are having to travel the full width of the county, as opposed to the area committees meeting at 4 who've just got to travel locally. So I just thought it was a better idea to have them both at all at 4 o'clock. So no confusion. Strategic Planning Committee, instead of going on till sometimes 9:30 at night when people lose the will to live, after often being here for 9 o'clock in the morning meetings, it just makes more sense to me.
Okay. That seems to have met approval. The other one, there was a mistake on the lax. They had the wrong month. As you are aware, we have the big meetings and the smaller meetings, which are just planning only and planning related issues. That has now been corrected so that the smaller months include August and December. So it's all in there. Are we happy with that? Can we agree that? Agree. Right. Item 13 is the exclusion of the press and the public. I need this motion of section 100A(4) of Local Government Act to be put. Is that put? Agreed. Now we need to remove public and press. Now that includes the camera.